So what's the what are you guys doing today?
So today we're just kind of continuing what we did yesterday. And so I'll just kind of, if it's okay, just explain what we kind of came across yesterday.
Sure.
So at 12:43, we received a call about odor in the creek. When we arrived on site, we made contact with the crew that reported that to us, and then quickly established that there was a spill up here at the park's location. When we got to the creek, we saw fuel, gasoline in the creek. Our initial response is to coordinate with Department of Ecology, and also get a contractor on site that has some specialized equipment that we can use to work with gasoline. So we got those resources coming. We deployed some boom, which is it's kind of special in the fact that it doesn't absorb water; it only absorbs fuel. So it sits there floating on the water in the creek, soaking up fuel. We noticed that was working fairly well, was absorbing fuel quickly. Those resources started to arrive. We also asked for additional resources to start doing a downstream survey to see if there was any environmental damage, any fish killed. Once those resources arrived, it started working. They reported back to us that they were indeed seeing some dead fish in the creek. We continued through the night deploying that boom in the initial spot and also downstream, and that's what we're kind of continuing to do today. Gasoline for us is kind of difficult to respond to because one, it poses a fire risk especially in the initial attack area for us, and then the other thing is it's fairly miscible in water. It doesn't float very well, so once it starts moving through the water downstream, it's difficult to capture because it's part of the water column. So that's kind of what we're up against. That's kind of what we're doing now at this point.
So knowing where Longfellow Creek is from here, how exactly did the gasoline that came out of the tank over here get into the creek then?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's important for people to understand that these drains that are here on the ground, they're not where the water ends. Water and whatever else goes into those drains continues down and goes to typically the closest water body or a sewer. In this case, Longfellow Creek is the discharge point for that fuel.
But can you speak to the environmental impacts? I know you mentioned some dead fish.
Yeah, and our job is to just kind of do that initial response. We're not there to determine cause of death or anything like that, but we do know that when we have fuel in the creek, we want to survey that. And so what we do is when we start seeing that, or if we see that, we coordinate with Department of Ecology and and Washington State Fish and Wildlife, and they start that process. Our job at SPU Spill Response is to mitigate that spill. So stop the spill. Everybody's got their specialty, and that's their specialty is kind of that long-term environmental impact and that cause of death. We're just kind of gathering information, initial response, and trying to collect that fuel, stop the issue.
Can you estimate how much is made it into the water?
No, so we don't know. Part of the reason is the cause of this was theft, and so those folks that caused this, it's not like when we have a spill at a gas station where somebody's like, hey, this is how much spilled. These are people coming in the night doing something illegal, and so that part of the equation that we would usually use for an investigation doesn't exist.
Do you know how much your booms have soaked up then? How much oil?
I don't have that information yet. Because overnight, I wasn't here overnight, so I can see how many boom we used and then kind of give you a rough estimate. Yeah.
There was a mention that Parks had recovered 70 gallons, though. How did they recover 70 gallons?
So it's my understanding that when they arrived to work, that there were 70 gallons still in various types of containers that were being used in that process. It wasn't 70 gallons that had spilled. It was 70 gallons that was in gas cans and water bottles and buckets.
Left behind by the thieves, ostensibly, then?
One would assume.
Okay.
Can you describe how the theft was happening, what they were exactly doing, and how they were trying to get the gas?
No, I don't know that part.
Okay.
That's probably more of a question for Seattle Police and Seattle Parks. Yeah. I can speak about the response.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many people are out here today? How many people are part of the spill response team?
So with rotation, because we had people here overnight, somewhere around 10 to 12 folks altogether have been part of this response.
Going over the whole weekend, how long do you think you'll be out here?
I think we'll be out here today, tomorrow, and then as we start seeing reduction in the amount of fuel in the creek, which we are seeing already, we'll start changing our level of response to match what we're seeing in the creek.
Is there any warning that's gone on down creek, like signs at any particular points or anything?
No, there haven't been.
Eric, can you speak to the seriousness of what you guys are dealing with right now?
Yeah, I think it's so. I can't remember if it was the last person I talked to or you folks, but gasoline is very difficult for us to deal with. It's flammable, especially at the initial spot. So right here where we were working last night, and then where it was coming into the creek, that risk we have to look at while we're responding. So that's one risk. It being miscible in water and mixing makes our response very difficult. Heavier oils float on the water a lot better and are more recoverable. Gas isn't. And then seeing that there's possible environmental consequence to this spill, that makes our job more difficult. And then not knowing exactly what happened, is also a challenge for us.
So Eric, as you clean up right now, do you believe that you have all the gas that has spilled? It's done spilling, the leak is over?
Yeah, the leak and spill portion is over. There's still stuff that's trapped in areas that it's kind of showing up, whether it's pipes that still have some contamination in them. So we're still seeing some fuel in the creek.
Any word to the public?
I think it's important for people to know that we're doing all that we can. As environmental responders, this upsets us as well. We think of ourselves as people who are out here to help the environment, to serve the public, and when we respond to something like this, it's pretty devastating for us because we don't like to see this. We like to stop spills where they happen, work with people, and when something like this happens, especially with the malicious nature of this response, it's kind of upsetting. So we don't like it.
So just one thing about the mechanics of the spill. Obviously, you guys didn't get here for hours later, and you weren't here in the middle of the night, and someone else is investigating. But was it that maybe the thieves were interrupted, so there was a hole left in the tank, and that's how the gas got in, or do we know?
I would be speculating. They were siphoning, is how that they were transferring the fuel, but I would be speculating on why.
Got it. Do you have any idea of how what happened to the various containers that you mentioned? Have those been seized by police? Are they still on site here somewhere, the things that were found yesterday?
The gasoline was transferred back into the tank.
Okay.
Yeah.